Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. All praises due to God, the Lord of all the worlds. And now, please be seated, ladies and gentlemen. In accordance with Muslim tradition and consistent with the wishes of Muhammad Ali, may God have mercy on him, we begin this program with a brief recitation from the Quran, the scripture of the Muslims by Hamza Abdul Malik. Hamza Abdul Malik is a young imam of the Midtown Mosque in Memphis, Tennessee, where he's spearheading a neighborhood renewal effort in one of the most blighted neighborhoods in Memphis, and that effort is centered around the mosque, one of the few African-American graduates of Al-Azhar University. He will share with us a few verses from the Quran.
Ladies and gentlemen, Hamza Abdul Malik.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الذين قالوا ربنا الله ثم استقاموا تتنزل عليهم الملائكة ألا تخافوا ولا تحزنوا وأبشروا بالجنة التي كنتم توعدون. نحن أولياؤكم في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة ولكم فيها ما تشتهي أنفسكم ولكم فيها ما تدعون. نزلا من غفور رحيم. ومن أحسن قولا ممن دعا إلى الله وعمل صالحا وقال إنني من المسلمين. ولا تستوي الحسنة ولا السيئة ادفع بالتي هي أحسن فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم. وما يلقاها إلا الذين صبروا وما يلقاها إلا ذو حظ عظيم. صدق الله العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.
And now with the with the translation of those verses, we would like to bring to the stage Aya Kutma. Aya Kutma is a second-generation daughter of Syrian immigrants. She's an excellent student. In her spare time in recent years, she raises money to provide medical supplies, surgical instruments, and other forms of medical assistance for Syrian refugees fleeing from the horror of the current conflict in that land, and we pray that Almighty God brings it to a cessation soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, Aya Kutma.
In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Truly those who say, "Our Lord is God," and are upright, the angels will descend upon them saying, "Have neither fear nor sadness, but rather rejoice in this paradise that you have been promised." We are your allies in this lower life and the hereafter, where you will have your heart's desire, and you'll have whatever you ask for, hospitably from the one most forgiving, most merciful. Who is more beautiful in speech than the one who invites to God and does righteous works, saying, "Truly I am submitted to God"? For good and evil are not equal. Repel ugliness with beauty, and behold, the one between you and whom there was enmity is transformed into a warm friend. But no one arrives at the station without great patience and immense fortune. Surah Fussilat, Prostration, chapter 41, verses 30 to 35. Thank you.
I forgot to mention that she is a Louisvillian, a proud resident of this city. Oh God, bless this day of ours. You are our protector. What an excellent protector. What an excellent helper. Honorable President Bill William J. Clinton, distinguished guests, viewing audience, on behalf of the Ali family and the city of Louisville, Kentucky, the home of the people's champ, Ali, Ali, Ali. We're dealing with time here, folks. Louisville, Kentucky, admirably led by Mayor Greg Fisher. I would like to welcome you. Give it up for the mayor. I would like to welcome you to this memorial service for the people's champ, Muhammad Ali. At this time, we would like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Reverend Kevin W. Cosby. If were not for time, since Cosby rhymes with Ali, we would say Cosby, Cosby, but time doesn't permit. Reverend Cosby has served as senior pastor of St. Stephen Church in Louisville, Kentucky, due greatly to his practical and dynamic Bible teachings. His congregation has grown exponentially over the long years of his ministry. Reverend Cosby combines passion, wit, and intellect as the foundation of an inspirational ministry that has transformed the lives of thousands of individuals. Reverend Cosby.
Thank you. I looked in the dictionary for the word fidelity, and it had two words: Lonnie Ali. In 1967, 9 months prior to his assassination and martyrdom, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was interviewed by Merv Griffin on the Merv Griffin Show. Merv Griffin asked Dr. King a relevant question. He said, "Dr. King, what has been the greatest impact that the civil rights struggle has had on the Negro?" Dr. King paused and said, "Besides the dismantling of barriers that prohibited the Negro from free access, the greatest and the most profound effect that the civil rights struggle had was that it infused in the Negro something that the Negro needed all along, and that was a sense of somebodyness." You will never be able to appreciate what Dr. King meant when he said the Negro needed a sense of somebodyness until you understand the 350 years of nobodyness that was infused into the psyche of people of color. Every sacred document in our history, every hallowed institution conspired to convince the African in America that when God made the African, that God was guilty of creative malfeasance. All of our sacrosanct documents from the Constitution said to the Negro that you're nobody. The Constitution said that we were 3/5 of a person. Decisions by the Supreme Court, like the Dred Scott decision, said to the Negro, to the African, that you had no rights that whites were bound to respect. And even Francis Scott Key, in his writing of the Star-Spangled Banner, we sang verse 1, but in verse 3, he celebrates slavery by saying, "No refuge can save the hireling and slave from the sorrow of night or the death of the grave." Every institution, from religion to entertainment, from Amos and Andy to Jane and Tarzan, infused in the psyche of the Negro that he was inferior. But something happened to the Depression generation and the World War II generation of African Americans. Jackie Robinson picked up his bat and hit a ball, and the Brooklyn Dodgers win the pennant. Joe Louis dismantles the pride of Aryan supremacy by knocking out Max Smelling in 124 seconds. Jesse Lewis runs in ambulatory speed and wins 4 gold medals. Rosa Parks sits down on a bus in Montgomery in December of 1955, and a young seminary student from Boston University stands up and takes the complex ideas of Niebuhr and Tillich and dips it in chocolate so Big Mama can understand it. And then from Louisville, emerged the silver-tongued poet who took the ethos of somebodyness to unheard of heights. Before James Brown said, "I'm black and I'm proud," Muhammad Ali said, "I'm black and I'm pretty." Black and pretty was an oxymoron. Blacks did not say pretty. The first black millionaire in this country was not Oprah, but it was Madam C.J. Walker, who made products in order to help black people escape their Africanity. But Muhammad Ali said, "I'm proud, I'm pretty, I'm glad of who I am." And when he said that, that infused in Africans a sense of somebodyness. To extrapolate Muhammad Ali from the times in which he lives is what's called historic presentism. It is to talk about George Washington and not talk about the American Revolution. It's to talk about Abraham Lincoln and not talk about the Civil War. It's to talk about Franklin Delano Roosevelt and not talk about the Depression and World War II. Our brother Muhammad Ali was a product of a difficult time, and he dared to love black people at a time when black people had a problem loving themselves. He dared to affirm the beauty of blackness. He dared to affirm the power and the capacity of African Americans. He dared to love America's most unloved race. And he loved us all. And we loved him because we knew he loved us. He loved us all. Whether you lived in the suburbs or whether you lived in the slums. Whether you lived on the avenue or whether you lived in an alley. Whether you came from the penthouse or whether you lived in the projects. Whether you came from Morehouse or whether you had no house. Whether you were high yellow or boot black, Muhammad Ali loved you. Our city is known for two things. It is known for Muhammad Ali. It is known for the Kentucky Derby. We hope you will come back and visit our city the first Saturday in May. We hope you will place a bet on one of the horses. But if you do, please know the rules. What will happen is the horses will start off in the starting gate, and then the signal will be given. They will run in the mud for 2 minutes, and the winner will then be led to the winner's circle where a wreath of roses will be placed around the horse's neck. We want you to make a bet, but please know the rules. You cannot bet for the horse once it's in the winner's circle. You have to bet for the horse while it's still in the mud. And there are a lot of people who will bet and have bet on Muhammad Ali when he was in the winner's circle. But the masses bet on him while he was still in the mud. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar stood with him when he was in the mud. Jim Brown stood with him when he was in the mud. Bill Russell stood with him when he was in the mud. Howard Cosell stood with him when he was in the mud. Now, please don't mishear me. I am not saying that Muhammad Ali is the property of black people. He is the property of all people. But while he is the property of all people, let us never forget that he is the product of black people in their struggle to be free. I went looking for Jesus on a poor West End street, thinking that I would find him as he walked around with men and women with stumbling feet. People who had their heads bowed low because they were broke and had nowhere to go. But then I went looking for Jesus way in the sky, thinking he would wear a robe that would dazzle my eye. When suddenly Jesus came walking by with stumbling feet because he'd been hanging with the poor on a West End street. The Muhammad Ali of my childhood had a shuffle, but as he grew older, he walked with shuffling feet. And I would submit to you that he walked with shuffling feet not because of Parkinson's disease, but he walked with shuffling feet because he hung out with the folk in West Louisville who had shuffling feet. Peace and God bless you.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Don't give a teenager a telephone and don't give a preacher a microphone. We'd like to bring Senator Orrin Hatch to the stage, now in his 7th term as Utah's senator, one of Utah's senators. He is the most senior Republican in the Senate, author of some of the most far-reaching legislation in recent decades. Senator Hatch is a seasoned and distinguished public servant. We are deeply honored by his presence today.
Wow, Reverend, that was really good. It's hard for this poor old senator to have to follow that, is all I can say. Well, ahead of the first fight with Sonny Liston, Muhammad Ali stood before a crowded pack of reporters and told the world unapologetically who he was. I'm the greatest. That's what he said. With this simple proclamation, Ali took the pen of history and wrote his own title in the textbooks. He was not Muhammad Ali, the prize fighter, or even Muhammad Ali, the world champion. He was Muhammad Ali, the greatest. Ali's doubters dismissed this declaration as mere braggadocio. But Ali wasn't talking trash. He was speaking truth. And he was, in the world of boxing, he truly was the greatest. With the cutthroat quickness of a street fighter and the simple grace of a ballerina, Ali moved with Achilles-like agility and punched with Herculean strength. But to assume that Ali's greatness stems solely from his athletic prowess is to see only half the man. Ali was great, not only as an extraordinary fighter, he was a committed civil rights leader an international diplomat, a forceful advocate of religious freedom, an effective emissary of Islam. He was something. He was caring as a father, a husband, a brother, and a friend. Indeed, it is as a personal friend that I witnessed Ali's greatness for myself. I first met Muhammad Ali 28 years ago, almost to the day, to this day. I was in my Senate office, and an assistant called in and said, "You have a visitor outside." And I was really surprised that it was none other than the champion himself. The friendship we developed, I think, was puzzling to many people, especially to those who saw only our differences. I might say that, but where others saw difference, Ali and I saw kinship. We were both dedicated to our families and deeply devoted to our faiths. He took Islam, and I to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We were both products of humble backgrounds and hardscrabble youth. Ali grew up poor here in Louisville, and I grew up poor in Pittsburgh. True, we were different in some ways, but our differences fortified our friendship. They did not define it. I saw greatness in Ali's ability to look beyond the horizon and our differences, to find common ground. This shared sensibility was the foundation of a rich and meaningful relationship that I will forever treasure. One of my fondest memories of our friendship was when Ali joined me in the Salt Lake, to go and listen to the Salt Lake Mormon Tabernacle Choir. I have to say, it was the famed Mormon Tabernacle Choir. And Ali, loved music, and he enjoyed the choir's performance. But he seemed most excited to share his own religious beliefs with those who came to hear the Christian hymns. Ali attracted big crowds that day, and as he always did, and eagerly gave everyone autographed pamphlets explaining his Muslim beliefs. Hundreds of Mormons lined up to grab all these pamphlets, and of course, I took one for myself. I respected his deeply held convictions just as he respected mine. In our relationship, it was anchored by our different faiths. Ali was open to goodness in all of its diverse realities and varieties. On another occasion, I took Ali to Primary Children's Hospital in Salt Lake City. We visited with downtrodden children who perhaps had never smiled a day in their lifetime until Ali showed up. Ali held those kids and looked into their eyes. They would grin from ear to ear. These are kids that never smiled. They were so pained. The nurses were astounded. Never before had they seen someone who had connected so immediately and profoundly with these sick children. Ali had a special way with kids, as we all know. He may have been a tough and tenacious man in the ring, but he was compassionate and tender around those that he loved. For all of his ferocity as a fighter, Ali was also a peacemaker. A particular radio host in Utah berated me constantly on the airwaves, week after week. And one day the host asked if I would arrange for Ali to meet Utah's former middleweight champion, Gene Fullmer, for a joint interview. Ali agreed, knowing the appearance could help me build some goodwill, but he also was very interested in meeting Gene as well. It was an unforgettable experience. Here were two champions, face to face, reminiscing about some of the best fights the world has ever seen. And I have to say, and in the process, Ali claimed that radio host, well, he charmed the radio host so much on my behalf, gently transforming an unrepentant antagonist into a respectful sparring partner. So dedicated was Ali to our friendship that he joined me on the campaign trail during several election cycles. He came to Utah year after year to raise funds for a charity benefiting needy women, women in jeopardy, and families in our state. Ali didn't look at life through the binary lens of Republican, Democrat, so common today. He saw worthy causes and shared humanity. In Ali's willingness to put principles ahead of partisanship, he showed us all the path to greatness. And I'll never forget that greatness, nor will I ever forget him. There were many faces to Ali's greatness. His abilities as a boxer, his charisma as a public figure, his benevolence as a father and as a friend. All of these made Ali great. But it was something else that made him the greatest. Ali was the greatest because, as a debilitated yet unbroken champion in his later years, he pointed us to a greatness beyond ourselves, a greatness beyond even Ali. He pointed us to the greatness of God. God raised up Ali to be the greatest fighter in the world of all time. Yet he allowed Ali to wrestle with Parkinson's disease, an inescapable reminder that we are all mortal and that we are all dependent on God's grace. Ali believed this himself. He once told me, God gave me this condition to remind me always that I am human and that only he is the greatest. Ali was an unsurpassed symbol of our universal dependence on the divine. He was the greatest because he reminded us all who truly is the greatest, God, our Creator. I'm eternally grateful for my special bond with this special man and for my friendship with his beloved wife, Lonnie, who I love dearly. She's one of the great women in this world. She was dedicated to her companion to the very end, and boy, I know it. I pray that all may rest peacefully, and that Ali will rest peacefully in the presence of the greatest of all, even our God. I can bear testimony that I believe in God. I believe that we're here on earth for a reason. I believe that this earth life is a time for us to do what's right for God and for our fellow men and women. And I don't know that I've ever met anybody who did it any better than my friend, Muhammad Ali. God bless you. God bless the family.
Next, we would like to welcome Monsignor Father Henry Chrystal to the stage. Father Chrystal has been the pastor of St. Patrick's Parish in Erie, Pennsylvania. He was ordained in 1970 and named a domestic prelate with the title Monsignor by Pope John Paul II in 1991. His wisdom, scholarship, and spiritual guidance is a source of solace and guidance for Catholics and members of other faith communities far, far beyond his Pennsylvania home. Father Chrystal.
Let us pray. Loving, eternal God, as we gather today in prayer, We do so with an abiding sense of gratitude. Our gratitude knows no bounds as we thank you for the gift of this good and gentle man. Proclaiming himself to be the greatest, he showed us that his greatness lie in his love and concern for others, most particularly the marginalized, the suffering, the helpless, the hopeless. Your gift of him has enriched us, has made us better people, has created a more gentle world. We dare not return him to you today without expressing our gratitude for the gift of him. Amen.
Next, we will hear a few brief remarks from Dr. Timothy Giannotti. Dr. Giannotti is a professor of Islamic Studies at the University of Waterloo in Ontario, Canada. He is equally at home busying himself with the affairs of the Muslim community as he is sitting in the library and burrowing through books, a true public intellectual.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, who is the loving nurturer of the creation and the ever compassionate and ever merciful. I'd like to share a prayer today. And this is a prayer adapted from a traditional prayer of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. May God's peace and blessings be upon him. But before I do so, I would just like to say to the family, to Lonnie, to everyone here, that serving Muhammad Ali has been one of the greatest privileges of my life. O God, you who are the light of the heavens and the earth, grant our brother Muhammad a light in his heart, a light in his earthly body now restored to the earth, a light in his grave, a light before him as he journeys on to you, a light in all that he has left behind in this world, a light to his right and a light to his left. O God, increase him in light. Grant him light. A light in his deeds in this world and a light in the hereafter. A light in the hearts of those whom he loved, and a light in the eyes of those who loved him. A light in those whom he knocked down, and a light in those whom he lifted up. A light in his words which echo in our hearts. A light in the lives of all those whom he touched. A light in his children and a light in their mothers. A light in his grandchildren and a light in his devoted wife, Lonnie. O Lord, increase your servant in light and give him light. Embrace him in light and fill us all with light. Ya Nuru Samawati wal Ard, O you who are the light of the heavens and the earth. Ya Arham Ar-Rahimin, O you who are the most merciful of all those who show mercy. Ya Allah, Yahu.
Next, we will hear a few words from Rabbi Michael Lerner. Rabbi Lerner is not only the rabbi of Beit Tikkun, but also the editor of Tikkun magazine. As the magazine's name suggests, Rabbi Lerner has dedicated his life to working to heal and repair the world. Rabbi Lerner is never afraid of ruffling a few feathers, so we ask him to be nice today. Rabbi Lerner.
We'll see about those feathers. El Malei Rachamim Shochen Bameromim. Master of compassion, God of compassion, send your blessings to Muhammad Ali, and send your blessings to all who mourn for him, and send your blessings for all the millions and millions of people who mourn for him all over this planet. Amen. I come here speaking as representative of American Jews, and to say that American Jews played an important role of solidarity with the African American struggles in this country, and that we today stand in solidarity with the Islamic community in this country and all around the world. We will not tolerate politicians or anyone else putting down Muslims and blaming Muslims for a few people. We know what it's like to be demeaned. We know what it's like to have a few people who act against the highest visions of our tradition to then be identified as the value of the entire tradition. And one of the reasons that we in Tikkun magazine, a magazine of liberal and progressive Jews, but also an interfaith magazine, have called upon the United States to stand up to the part of the Israeli government that is oppressing Palestinians is that we as Jews understand that our commitment is to recognize that God has created everyone in God's image and that everyone is equally precious, and that means the Palestinian people as well as all other people on the planet. I know the people of Louisville have a special relationship to Muhammad Ali, and I had a personal relationship in the 60s when both of us were indicted by the federal government for our various stands against the war in Vietnam. I want to say that although he was cheered on as the heavyweight champion of the world, you know, the truth is that in all the honor to him, but heavyweight champions of the world come and go, and sports heroes come and go. There was something about Muhammad Ali that was different. At the key moment when he had that recognition, he used it to stand up to an immoral war and say, "No, I won't go." And it's for that reason that tens of millions of Americans who don't particularly care about boxing do care about Muhammad Ali, because he was a person who was willing to risk a great honor that he got and a great fame that he got to stand up for the beliefs that he had, to speak truth to power when the rest of the people around him said, no, you're going to lose your championship. And it was taken away from him for 5 years. But he stood up and was willing to take that kind of a risk because of that kind of moral integrity. So I want to say, how do we honor Muhammad Ali? And the answer is the way to honor Muhammad Ali is to be Muhammad Ali today. And that means us, everyone here and everyone listening. It's up to us to continue that ability to speak truth to power. We must speak out, refuse to follow the path of conformity to the rules of the game in life. We must refuse to follow the path of conformity. Tell the 1% who own 80% of the wealth of this country that it's time to share that wealth. Tell the politicians who use violence worldwide and then preach into nonviolence to the oppressed that it's time for them to end their drone warfare and every other form of warfare, to close our bases around the world, to bring the troops home. Tell those who created mass incarceration that it's time to create a guaranteed income for everyone in our society. Tell judges to let out of prison the many African Americans swept up by racist police and imprisoned by racist judges. And many of them in prison today for offenses like possessing marijuana that white people get away with all the time. Tell our elected officials to imprison those who authorized torture and those who ran the big banks and investment companies that caused the economic collapse of 2008. Tell the leaders of Turkey to stop killing the Kurds. Tell Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu that the way to get security for Israel is to stop the occupation of the West Bank and help create a Palestinian state. Tell the next president of the United States that she Tell the next president of the United States that she should seek a constitutional amendment to make all national and state elections funded by Congress and the state legislatures and all other sources of money be banned, including money from corporations, from individuals, all other money, make it all public funding. Tell her that the way to achieve homeland security is not for us to try new ways of domination. The strategy of domination of the world, of the other, to get security has been tried for the last 10,000 years and it doesn't work. The way to get security is for the United States to become known as the most generous and caring country in the world, not the most powerful. And we can start with a global and domestic Marshall Plan to once and for all end global and domestic poverty, homelessness, hunger, inadequate education, inadequate health care. So I want to, as chair of the Interfaith Network of Spiritual Progressives, by the way, spiritualprogressives.org, come and join us, spiritualprogressives.org. I want to affirm our commitment to the well-being of all Muslims on this planet, as well as the people of all faiths and secular humanists as well. We wish to pay honor to Muslims of the world as they continue today the fast of Ramadan and join with them in mourning the loss and celebrating the life of Muhammad Ali, a great fighter for justice and peace. Peace be upon him, peace be upon the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon all of humanity, and peace on all of us. Amen. Go. All right.
Time is not on our side. After that speech, I have to edit my initial remarks. Honorable First Man, William J. Clinton. Chief Sidney Hill, in 2002, Sidney Hill was selected as Tadaduho, or principal spiritual leader of his people, a true friend of the earth and beloved to all who know him. He is a leader whose spirituality is coupled with a passionate pursuit of justice. We are honored that he has come here today to share a few words and a few thoughts with us. Chief Hill.
Kenu kwaso I nia and guy hoen dahqua the kewanahqua or the nashani on go home. Echia danuta and they he scano a sono dunyo hek dananga o sundawa gona o ungayat Tawaha Kagonda Swanigo Hayenda Hamwa Sungwaya Daihwa Aho Hahagwaisha Scano Hadadia Te Tauhan Jade Sungwaya Disai Sa Deot Haswanah Kwa Allah Daneto.
This is Chairman Stevens with us here, Oneida Nation, and Lauren Lyons from the Onondaga Nation. Translation, he said, my relatives, it is my responsibility to pick up the words for the Haudenosaunee, the people of the Longhouse. They wish you well. They want you to be a peace of mind. Now, this great darkness that has happened to us, you must understand that he who had gathered us here, that his road is straight. Peacefully, he will arrive at his land. Sungwaya Disae, our Creator. It is the same as you call him, Allah. These were the words. And to the family, and relatives, and friends of Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was a leader among men and a champion of the people. He fought for the people of color, yet he was a man of peace and principle, a man of compassion, who used his great gifts for the common good. His spirit has a clear path to the Creator. Tadadaho, Sidney Hill, a spiritual leader of the Haudenosaunee, Six Nation Iroquois Confederation, Onondaga Nation, and myself, Joe Guishon, Faith Keeper, Turtle Clan, Onondaga Council of Chiefs, have journeyed here today to add our voice to this congregation of world leaders in honor of his work and for the rights and dignity of people of color and the common man. He was always in support of the indigenous peoples of this hemisphere in our quest for our inherent land rights, self-determination, identity, and collective rights that include the natural world. We know what he was up against, because we've had 524 years of survival training ourselves. In 1978, a congressman from the state of Washington put a bill into Congress to terminate our treaties with the United States. And Indian nations walked from California to Washington, D.C. in protest. Muhammad Ali marched into Washington, D.C. with us. He was a free, independent spirit. He stood his ground with great courage and conviction, and he paid a price. And this country did too. And we all did. Values and principles will determine one's destiny. And the principles of a nation will do the same. Poor people do not have many options. And you fighters know what I'm talking about. He said that the ring was Ali's path to his destiny. He said he'd be heavyweight champion of the world, and he was 3 times. And this 4th time right here, right now. On his journey in life, he lived and learned the hard way. He brought a light into this world, my world, our world. And that light will shine a long, long time. Peace, brother, peace. And on behalf of Tadadaho, the Haudenosaunee, my friend Ernie, and the indigenous people everywhere, peace. Thank you. Yawaha.
We introduced Chief Hill. He was joined. His words were translated by Chief Orrin Lyons, who was born into a traditional indigenous family, grew up on the native reservations of upstate New York. In 1970, he became the chief and faith keeper of the Turtle Clan of the Onondaga Nation. His scholarship, stewardship, and leadership is a source of benefit and great blessing for all who know him. Now we'd like to introduce Rabbi Joe Rapport. Rabbi Rapport is senior rabbi of the temple here in Louisville, where he has been a leader in interfaith work. He has a passion for teaching youth, and in fact, it is his work with youth that led him to cross paths with Muhammad Ali. His religious leadership focuses on compassion, care, and working together with all to build a better world. Rabbi Rapport.
This is a reading from our memorial prayers on Yom Kippur, our Day of Atonement, our most sacred day of the year. It was written many decades ago by Rabbi Alvin Fine, a civil rights and humanitarian leader who could never have known when he composed these words that he was writing a eulogy for Muhammad Ali. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey, from childhood to maturity, and youth to age, from innocence to awareness, and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, and strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness, and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, and pain to compassion, from grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. We say words of prayer, and they remain words until we encounter a person who embodies these words and makes them real. I've said these words many times before, at funerals and in memorial services, but never have I felt them come to life and speak of a single shining soul as I do today. Muhammad Ali was the heart of this city, the living, breathing embodiment of the greatest that we can be. He was our heart, and that heart beats here still. Let me tell you a story you already know. It's one of those stories about Ali being gracious to a stranger that so many of us have told so many times and in so many ways that we sometimes forget the lessons that these stories were intended to teach us. It's a story Hannah tells about her father towards the end of their book, The Soul of a Butterfly. Hannah's driving her father to a bookstore on one Sunday to pick up some Bibles and Qur'ans for a project that he's working on. They pass an elderly man standing by the road with a Bible in one hand and his thumb in the air with the other. They offer him a ride. And he thanks them, saying that he's on his way home from church. He only needs to go a few miles down the street where he can pick up a cab. Hannah asks where he lives. He doesn't want to trouble them or go out of their way. He has no idea who's sitting in the front seat of this car. Until Muhammad Ali turns around and says, "It's no trouble at all. We're just on our way to a bookstore to buy some Bibles and Qur'ans." Once the man gets over meeting the greatest of all time, he insists that he has 3 Bibles in his house, and he'd be pleased to give them to Ali in appreciation for the ride. Ali thanks him, but says he wants to pay for the Bibles. The man says, "No, the Bibles were meant as a gift." Ali asks him what he does for a living, and it turns out that the man's had a stroke and he's been forced into retirement. Ali then tries to hand him a big pile of money for the Bibles, but the man refuses And this is where things get interesting. Ali says, "Take the money, man. I'm trying to get into heaven." And the man replies, "So am I." Ali is not taking no for an answer. He says, "If you don't take the money, I might not get in." And the man replies, "If I do take your money, I might not get in." They arrive at his home, and the man invites him in to meet his wife of 30 years. He gives Ali the Bibles. Ali slips the money under a napkin on the kitchen table. They're about to leave, and Hannah gives the man her phone number and tells him to call her if he ever needs a ride home from church again. Sitting in the car, Ali turns to his daughter and asks, "Would you really go out of your way and pick him up and drive him all the way home?" And she says yes. And with tears in his eyes, he says, "That's me in you." He says, "You're on the road to heaven." Therein lies Ali's greatness, in his ability to see within himself something greater, and in his ability to inspire others to see such greatness reside within themselves. There will never be another greatest like Muhammad Ali, but we together can now embody a measure of his kindness and his compassion. We can say, each of us in our hearts, "There's a little bit of Ali in me." This week, we have mourned the loss and celebrated the life of a Louisville legend and a citizen of the world. And of all the words and in all the ways, the most powerful moments have always been made in the voices of young people, repeated in prayer services and chanted in the streets. "I am Ali. I am Ali. I am not the fighter that Ali was. And I may not have the courage which he never lacked. And I am definitely not as pretty. But in my heart, and in my hope, and in my prayers, I am Muhammad Ali." When we say that in our hearts, when we live that in our lives, then we together can build a legacy worthy of the greatest of all time. So say that now with me, in your heart and in this room. I am Ali.
You know, one of the amazing things that we've witnessed during our time here in Louisville has been just so many stories of common, ordinary people. Just folks on the street, working in the hotels, the restaurants. Virtually everyone has a story concerning how Muhammad Ali touched their lives. He came to my 4th grade class. He helped me out in this or that way. He came to visit me when I was sick. Just on and on and on. And collectively, those experiences, they become synergetic. They become greater than the individual parts. And when we roll through the streets of the city today, I've witnessed something I've never, ever witnessed in my life. And I don't think I will ever witness again. I witnessed the power. In our Muslim tradition, we call it wilaya. It might be loosely translated as sainthood. I witnessed the power of sainthood. Venerable Utsumi, is a member of the Nipponzan Myohoji, a Japanese Buddhist order dedicated to working for world peace through the practice of walking peace pilgrimages, anti-nuclear weapon pilgrimages, and the construction of peace pagodas all over the globe. He will be joined on stage by Sister Denise Lathan, another member of the order, and together they will share a traditional chant with us. Now we will listen to a reading by Ambassador Shabazz. Ambassador Ata'Allah Shabazz is the eldest of 6 daughters born to Al-Hajj Malik Shahbaz and Dr. Betty Shabazz. She proudly shares that she is inspired by her parents, their parents, and those before them through the descending generations. The former Prime Minister of Belize recognized her as a key ambassador on international cultural affairs and project development, and in 2002 appointed her as ambassador at large. Powerful and elegant, we invite Ambassador Shabazz to read and share and inspire us.
Assalamu alaikum. May peace be on all of us. As this is a homegoing celebration, I find myself balanced between that of celebration and depletion, loss, and somehow or another, my breathing capacity has been weakened this past week. So I ask all of you gathered and afar to please muster up and transmit a bit of your air to me. In the memory of Muhammad Ali, thank you all. Shukran, merci, obrigado, muchas gracias, shukriya, and more as the globe centers at this very moment amidst the holy month of Ramadan, where every 2 hours there's a time zone praying and including Muhammad Ali and his family in their thoughts. Amidst that are the prayers of all faiths, all those touched, even those that don't claim a religion, are feeling something right now in honor of the family and the memory of their father, husband. In the spirit of my parents, Malcolm X Shabazz and Dr. Betty Shabazz, in the presence of my 5 younger sisters, our children, and our grandchildren, I would like to first honor his beloved wife, my sister, Lonnie Ali, for all the strengths that you know and that resonate beyond. Sometimes you do need a little help, no matter how magnificent you are. And indeed, those that were with him, that loved him, his family members, sustained that. His 9 children, and I will name them: Maryam, Rasheda, Jamila, Muhammad Jr., Khalila, Mia, Hannah, Layla, and Assad, as well as their mothers and the 3rd generation of Ali grandchildren who accompany them. To his only brother, Rahman, to his extraordinary example of a best friend, Howard Bingham, and to his sister-in-law, Marilyn Williams, for all the grief that I am depleted by and others are feeling by his transition, there is none comparable to yours, and I know that. On this day and those to come, as you redefine your waking days with a life without him here presently, very different. Photos, memories, all the things that we have on him that keep him going. He touched you differently, and that has to be honored and recognized, never forsaken. Just know that when you are the descendant of and the presence of someone whose life was filled with principle, that the seed is in you so that you have to cultivate that responsibly as well. This moment is very meaningful for me to have been amongst those chosen and blessed by Muhammad himself and affirmed by his wife Lonnie, to take part by sharing a prose and a statement during this homegoing ceremony. While he and I had a treasured relationship, the genesis of this love was through the love for my father. Muhammad Ali was the last of a fraternity of amazing men bequeathed to me directly by my dad. Somewhere between me turning 18, 19, or 20, they all seemed to find me somehow, guided by an oath or a promise to my dad, long after him leaving this earth, to search for me. And they did, each one remaining in my life until joining the rest of the heaven's beloved summit of fearless humanitarians. This included Muhammad Ali, whom my dad loved as a little brother, 16 years his junior, and his entrusted friend. There was a double take when I came upon him, a once childhood child, and now looking right into his face. And you know how he is. You know, he gives you that little dare, like, is that you? From the very moment we found one another, it was as if no time had passed at all, despite all of the presumptions of division, despite all the efforts at separation, despite all of the organized distancing. We dove right into all of the unrequited, yet stated and duly acknowledged spaces we could explore and uncover privately. We cried out loud. His belt, his grief for having not spoken to my dad before he left. And then just as loudly, we'd laugh about the best of stories and some that can't be repeated. He was really funny. What was significant as brothers for my father and Ali was their ability to discuss openly anything, all facets of life, namely the true meaning as men with great responsibilities bestowed to them, of how to make an equitable difference in the lives of others. A unifying topic was faith, an ecumenical faith, respect for faith, all faiths, even if belonging to one specific religion or none, the root of such being the gift of faith itself. So in his own words, he wrote, "We all have the same God. We just serve him differently. Rivers, lakes, ponds, streams, oceans, all have different names, but they all contain water. So do religions have different names, and yet they all contain truth. Truth expressed in different ways and forms and times. It doesn't matter whether you're a Muslim, a Christian, or a Jew. When you believe in God, you should believe all people are part of one family. For if you love God, you can't love only some of his children. His words, and certainly ideals shared by both men. Love is a mighty thing, devotion is a mighty thing, and truth always reigns. Having Muhammad Ali in my life somehow sustained my dad's breath for me just a little while longer, 51 years longer, until now. I am forever grateful that our union on this earth together allowed for me a continuum of shared understanding, preserved confidentialities, and the comfort of living in his hometown of Louisville, Kentucky for the past 6 years. That was not a plan. And mostly for the gift of knowing and loving his wife and children forever forward, as my own family know that. As the last of the fraternity reaches the heavens, my heart is rendered ever longingly for that tribe of purpose, tribe of significance, tribe of confidence, tribe of character, tribe of duty, tribe of faith, tribe of service. We must make sure that the principle of men and women, like Muhammad Ali and others, whom dedicated their very being to assure that you get to recognize your own glory, is sustained and passed on like that Olympic torch. My dad would often state when concluding or parting from another, may we meet again in the light of understanding. And I say to you, with the light of that compass, by any means necessary.
Ladies and gentlemen, representing the President of the United States and Mrs. Obama, Miss Valerie Jarrett.
Good afternoon. On behalf of President Obama and Mrs. Obama, I wish to express to you their deepest regret that they couldn't be with us here today as we celebrate the extraordinary life of Muhammad Ali. I first met Muhammad Ali over 45 years ago through his friendship with my uncle, Gene Dibble. And he, my uncle, would be so touched that his son, Gene, is a pallbearer here today. Thank you, Lonnie. Because of my family connection, the President and First Lady asked me if I would read this tribute to you, penned by President Obama. It was 1980. An epic career was in its twilight. Everybody knew it, probably including the champ himself. Ali went into one of his final fights, an underdog. All of the smart money was on the new champ, Larry Holmes. And in the end, the odds makers were right. A few hours later, at 4 a.m., after the loss, after the fans had gone home and the sports writers were writing their final take, a sports writer asked a restroom attendant if he'd bet on the fight. The man, black and getting on in years, said he'd put his money on Ali. The writer asked why. Why, the man said? Why? Because he's Muhammad Ali. That's why. He said, "Mister, I'm 72 years old, and I owe the man for giving me my dignity. To Lonnie and the Ali family, President Clinton, and an arena full of distinguished guests, you are amazing. The man we celebrate today is not just a boxer or a poet or an agitator or a man of peace. He was not just a Muslim or a black man or a Louisville kid, though I know you wish that was it, Louisville, this wonderful city. He wasn't even just the greatest of all time. He was Muhammad Ali, the whole far greater than the sum of its parts. He was bigger, brighter, and more original and influential than just about anyone of his era. You couldn't have made him up. And yes, he was pretty too. He had fans in every city, every village, every ghetto on the planet. He was feted by foreign heads of states. The Beatles' British invasion took a detour to come to him. It seemed sometimes that the champ was simply too big for America. But I actually think that the world flocked to him in wonder precisely because, as he once put it, Muhammad Ali was America. Brash, defiant, pioneering, joyful, never tired, always game to test the odds. He was our most basic freedoms, religion, speech, spirit. He embodied our ability to invent ourselves. His life spoke to our original sin of slavery and discrimination, and the journey he traveled helped to shock our consciousness and lead us on a roundabout path towards salvation. And like America, he was always very much a work in progress. We do him a disservice to gauze up his story, to sand down his rough edges, to talk only of floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Ali was a radical, even in a radical of times, a loud and proud and unabashedly black voice in a Jim Crow world. His jabs knocked some sense into us. Yes, they did, pushing us to expand our imagination and bring others into our understanding. Now, there were times when he swung a bit wildly, that's right, wound up and accidentally may have wronged the wrong opponent, as he was the first to admit. But through all his triumphs and failures, Ali seemed to achieve the sort of enlightenment and inner peace that we are all striving towards. In the 60s, when other young men his age were leaving the country to avoid war or jail, he was asked why he didn't join them. He got angry. He said he'd never leave. His people, in his words, are here, the millions struggling for freedom and justice and equality, and I can do a lot of help in jail or not, right here in America. He'd have everything stripped from him, his titles, his standing, his money, his passion, very nearly his freedom. But Ali still chose America. I imagine he knew that only here in this country could he win it all back. So he chose to help perfect a union where a descendant of slaves can become the king of the world. And in the process, lend some dignity to all of us. Maids, porters, students, an elderly bathroom attendant, and help inspire a young, mixed kid with a funny name to have the audacity to believe he could be anything, even the President of the United States. Muhammad Ali was America. Muhammad Ali will always be America. What a man. What a spirit. What a joyous, mightiful champion. God bless the greatness of Ali. God bless his family. And God bless this nation we love. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lonnie Ali.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. You know, I said something to Matt Lauer yesterday that I firmly believed Muhammad had something to do with all of this. And I think we are right. Thank you all for being here to share in this final farewell to Muhammad. On behalf of the Ali family, let me first recognize our principal celebrant, Imam Zayed Shakir, and also Dr. Timothy Giannotti. We thank you for your dedication to helping us fulfill Muhammad's desire that the ceremonies of this past week reflect the traditions of his Islamic faith. And as a family, we thank the millions of people who, through the miracle of social media, inspired by their love for Muhammad, have reached out to us with their prayers. The messages have come in every language, from every corner of the globe. From wherever you are watching, know that we have been humbled by your heartfelt expressions of love. It is only fitting that we gather in a city to which Muhammad always returned after his great triumphs, a city that has grown as Muhammad has grown. Muhammad never stopped loving Louisville, and we know that Louisville loves Muhammad. We cannot forget a Louisville police officer, Joe S.B. Martin, who embraced a young 12-year-old boy in distress when his bicycle was stolen. Joe Martin handed young Cassius Clay, sorry for tripping over that last word, Clay, the keys to a future in boxing he could scarcely have imagined. America must never forget that when a cop and an inner-city kid talk to each other, then miracles can happen. Some years ago, during his long struggle with Parkinson's in a meeting that included his closest advisors, Muhammad indicated that when the end came for him, he wanted us to use his life and his death as a teaching moment for young people, for his country, and for the world. In effect, he wanted us to remind people who were suffering that he had seen the face of injustice, that he grew up in a segregation and that during his early life, he was not free to be who he wanted to be. But he never became embittered enough to quit or to engage in violence. It was a time when a young black boy his age could be hung from a tree, Emmett Till in Money, Mississippi in 1955, whose admitted killers went free. It was a time when Muhammad's friends, men that he admired, like Brother Malcolm, Dr. King, were gunned down and Nelson Mandela imprisoned for what they believed in. For his part, Muhammad faced federal prosecution. He was stripped of his title and his license to box, and he was sentenced to prison. But he would not be intimidated so as to abandon his principles and his values. Muhammad wants young people of every background to see his life as proof that adversity can make you stronger. It cannot rob you of the power to dream and to reach your dreams. This is why we built the Muhammad Ali Center, and that is the essence of the Ali Center message. Muhammad wants us to see the face of his religion, al-Islam, true Islam, as the face of love. It was his religion that caused him to turn away from war and violence. For his religion, he was prepared to sacrifice all that he had and all that he was to protect his soul and follow the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So even in death, Muhammad has something to say. He is saying that his faith required that he take the more difficult road. It is far more difficult to sacrifice oneself in the name of peace than to take up arms in pursuit of violence. You know, all of his life, Muhammad was fascinated by travel. He was childlike in his encounter with new surroundings and new people. He took his world championship fights to the ends of the earth, from the South Pacific to Europe to the Belgian Congo. And of course, with Muhammad, he believed it was his duty to let everyone see him in person because, after all, he was the greatest of all time. The boy from Grand Avenue in Louisville, Kentucky, grew in wisdom from his journeys. He discovered something new, that the world really wasn't black and white at all. It was filled with many shades of rich colors, languages, and religions. And as he moved with ease around the world, the rich and powerful were drawn to him, but he was drawn to the poor and the forgotten. Muhammad fell in love with the masses, and they fell in love with him. In the diversity of men and their faiths, Muhammad saw the presence of God. He was captivated by the work of the Dalai Lama, by Mother Teresa and church workers who gave their lives to protect the poor. When his mother died, he arranged for multiple faiths to be represented at her funeral, and he wanted the same for himself. We are especially grateful for the presence of the diverse faith leaders here today, and I would like to ask them to stand once more and be recognized. Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, as I reflect on the life of my husband, it's easy to see his most obvious talents. His majesty in the ring as he danced under those lights enshrined him as a champion for the ages. Less obvious was his extraordinary sense of timing, his knack for being in the right place at the right time seemed to be ordained by a higher power. Even though surrounded by Jim Crow, he was born into a family with two parents that nurtured and encouraged him. He was placed on the path of his dreams by a white cop, and he had teachers who understood his dreams and wanted him to succeed. The Olympic gold medal came, and the world started to take notice. A group of successful businessmen in Louisville, called the Louisville Sponsoring Group, saw his potential and helped him build a runway to launch his career. His timing was impeccable as he burst into the national stage, just as television was hungry for a star to change the face of sports. You know, if Muhammad didn't like the rules, he rewrote them. His religion, his name, his beliefs were his to fashion, no matter what the cost. The timing of his actions coincided with a broader shift in cultural attitudes across America, particularly on college campuses. When he challenged the U.S. government on the draft, his chance of success was slim to none. That the timing of his decision converged with a rising tide of discontent on the war. Public opinion shifted in his direction, followed by a unanimous Supreme Court ruling. In a stunning reversal of fortunes, he was free to return to the ring. When he traveled to Central Africa to reclaim his title from George Foreman, none of the sports writers thought he could win. In fact, most of them feared for his life. But in what the Africans call the miracle at 4 a.m., he became a champion once more. And as the years passed, and those slowed by Parkinson's, Muhammad was compelled by his faith to use his name and his notoriety to support the victims of poverty and strife. He served as a UN messenger of peace and traveled to places like war-torn Afghanistan. He campaigned as an advocate for reducing the yoke of third world debt. He stunned the world when he secured the release of 15 hostages from Iraq. As his voice grew softer, his message took on greater meaning. He came full circle with the people of his country when he lit a torch that seemed to create new light in the 1996 Olympics. Muhammad always knew instinctively the road he needed to travel. His friends know what I mean when I say he lived in the moment. He neither dwelled in the past nor harbored anxiety about the future. Muhammad loved to laugh, and he loved to play practical jokes on just about everybody. He was sure-footed in his self-awareness, secure in his faith, and he did not fear death. Yet his timing is once again poignant. His passing and its meaning for our time should not be overlooked. As we face uncertainty in a world and divisions at home, as to who we are as a people, Muhammad's life provides useful guidance. Muhammad was not one to give up on the power of understanding the boundless possibilities of love and the strength of our diversity. He counted among his friends people of all political persuasions, saw truth in all faiths and the nobility of all races, as witnessed here today. Muhammad may have challenged his government, but he never ran from it or from America. He loved this country, and he understood the hard choices that are born of freedom. I think he saw a nation's soul measured by the soul of its people. For his part, he saw the good soul in everyone. And if you were one of the lucky ones to have met him, you know what I meant. He awoke every morning thinking about his own salvation, and he would often say, I just want to get to heaven, and I've got to do a lot of good deeds to get there. And I think Muhammad's hope is that his life provides some guidance on how we might achieve for all people what we aspire for ourselves and our families. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Maryam Ali.
Peace be with you, everyone here. And on behalf of the Ali family, I just want to say thank you to Louisville, Kentucky. All the love you've shown us in our lives has been unbelievable. Also, I want to thank the entire globe. My father was loved all over. The processional today was overwhelming, but it was so beautiful. I just want to say we love you just like you love us. Thank you very much. As you know, my father loved poetry. He was always rhyming and promoting his fights, and he had poems of the heart, spiritual poems, and poems to promote. And I just wrote a piece for him in honor of him on behalf of my sisters and brothers and everyone who loves my father. It's called Thank You, Our Dear Father. My heart was sore when your spirit soared. Your physical body is no more. But my mind tells different tales of all that you taught me, your family, and the masses. Most importantly, the belief in God who created humanity to thrive in equality. You fought for a purpose to uphold the principle that we as a people have divine human rights. Staring right into the eyes of oppression, you proclaim your beautiful complexion, your God-given skills, your independent will, and the freedom of your faith. As your daughter, I am grateful for all of our conversations about men, women, and relationships, guiding me to first have a loving relationship with self, refusing anyone to chip away at my esteem, and expect the respect of a queen. Thank you, our dear Father, for asking us to think about our purpose and showing us the beauty of service to others. We marveled at your sincere love for people as you treated all who approached you with dignity. Whether they were rich or poor, your kindness was unconditional, never perceiving anyone as beneath you. So many have shared personal stories about what you have meant to them, as you have exemplified values and qualities that have enhanced their lives. If I had every dollar for every story, I could paper the sky. Your family is so proud of the legacy you left behind, but I hope that the history of you can help turn the tide of self-hate and violence, because we are overwhelmed with moments of silence for tragic deaths. Here on this soil, American soil, in the Middle East or anywhere else in this world, we crave for peace. The peace that you rest in now. We will forever cherish the 74 years you graced this earth. You will be greatly missed. But now, we send you off in celebration, a blown kiss and prayers as you enter your final round. God's last boxing bell will sound in heaven. I love you. We all love you. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rasheda Ali Walsh.
We are so honored that you have packed this room with your love. Thank you all. Thank you so much for being here today to celebrate our father. You are the greatest father to us, and it was God's will to take you home. Your family will try our best to make you proud and carry on your legacy of giving and love. You have inspired us and the world to be the best version of ourselves. May you live in paradise, free from suffering. You shook up the world in life. Now you're shaking up the world in death. Daddy's looking at us now, right, and saying, I told you I was the greatest. No one compares to you, Daddy. You once said, I know where I'm going, and I know the truth, and I don't have to be what you want me to be. I'm free to be who I am. Now you are free to be with your Creator. We love you so much, Daddy. Until we meet again, fly, butterfly, fly.
Hello, my name is Ali Nicola. I was born on Muhammad Ali's birthday. It was named after him. He used to call me the little greatest. We can all learn from Muhammad's example of kindness and understanding. When Muhammad was asked how he would like to be remembered, he said, I like for them to say, he took a few cups of love, he took 1 tablespoon of patience, 1 teaspoon of generosity, 1 pint of kindness, he took 1 quart of laughter, 1 pinch of concern, and then he mixed willingness with happiness. He added lots of faith, and he stirred it up well. Then he spread it over a span of a lifetime, and he served it to each and every deserving person he met. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Natasha Mundkur.
Before I begin, I would just like to say that I am truly humbled and honored to be here. And I would like to thank the Muhammad Ali Center and the Ali family for giving me the opportunity to speak and to echo the voice that Muhammad has given me. So let me tell you a story about a man who refused to believe that reality was a limitation to achieve the impossible. A man who once reached up through the pages of a textbook and touched the heart of an 8-year-old girl whose reflection of herself mirrored those who could not see past the color of her skin. But instead of drawing on that pain from the distorted reality, she found strength, just as this man did when he stood tall in the face of pelting rain and shouted, I am the disturbance in the sea of your complacency, and I will never stop shaking your waves. And his voice echoed through hers, through mine. And she picked up the rocks that were thrown at her and she threw them back with a voice so powerful that it turned all the pain that she had faced in her life into strength and tenacity. And now, that 8-year-old girl stands before you to tell you that Ali's cry still shakes these waves today. That we are to find strength in our identities, whether we are black or white or Asian or Hispanic, LGBT, disabled or able-bodied, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu or Christian. His cry represents those who have not been heard and invalidates the idea that we are to be conformed to one normative standard. That is what it means to defeat the impossible. Because impossible is not a fact. Impossible is an opinion. Impossible is nothing. When I look into this crowd, I smile. I smile to recognize that he's not really gone. He lives in you, and he lives in me, and he lives in every person that he has touched in every corner of this world. Reality was never a limitation for Ali. For us, just as every punch his opponents threw, impossible is never enough to knock us down, because we are Ali. We are greater than the rocks or the punches that we throw at each other. We have the ability to empower and inspire and to connect and to unify, and that will live on forever. So let me tell you a story about a man. His name is Muhammad Ali. He is the greatest of all time. He is from Louisville, Kentucky, and he lives in each and every one of us. And his story is far from over. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Ramsey.
First of all, on behalf of my fellow Louisvillians, to the Ali family, we offer our condolences, our heartfelt prayers, and for Lonnie Ali, a very special prayer. We know that Muhammad was blessed with many gifts, but none more precious than Lonnie Ali, and we thank you so much. You know, I've got to tell you, Louisville, when I was in the procession today and I saw the tens of thousands of people and all the warmth and the love and the respect that was shown for Muhammad, I got to tell you, my heart swelled with pride. I know he was watching from above, and I know he absolutely loved it. But I don't think he'd be surprised. I think Muhammad would say, Louisville, Kentucky, the greatest city of all times. I'm feeling good. Man, I'll tell you what, how can we lose with the stuff we use? I'm I'm feeling so good, I think I'm gonna make a comeback and change my name back to Walnut Street. That's how good I feel. You know, for me, I always felt connected to Muhammad even before I'd met him. You know, maybe it was the fact that I was a Louisville boy. Maybe it's the fact that I love the Louisville Cardinals, like Muhammad. You know, but as our relationship evolved, I found that a lot of people felt this personal connection with Muhammad. And that's part of the Ali magic. You know, initially, for a lot of men my age, and certainly myself, it was the athlete that I was attracted to. I mean, that kind of size, that kind of speed, that agility, that grace, not only made him the heavyweight champion of the world 3 times, but it made him Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Century, the AP Athlete of the Century. Certainly it made him the athlete, a once-in-a-lifetime athlete. But I would argue that the combination of compassion, kindness, love, and the ability to lift us up made him a once-in-a-lifetime person. You know, Muhammad was blessed with many gifts, as I said, and he was a wise and faithful steward of those gifts. There's many stories about Muhammad, but there's a couple that really, to me, encapsulate what he was all about. I remember back in 2000, I made a trip to the Summer Olympics with Muhammad, and one day he decided we were going to go see a boxing match. And I remember we're ringside, the American wins, 15,000 people are chanting, USA, USA. And I thought, this is my Olympic moment. You know, I was filled with patriotic pride. The boxer came down from the ring. He took the obligatory picture with Muhammad, the fist-to-chin shot. Hundreds of photographers from around the world were taking pictures. You know, thousands of people cheering for Muhammad and this victorious fighter. And then Muhammad leaned down to me, whispered in my ear, said, I want to see the loser. I said, excuse me? I want to see the loser. So I motioned over to an Olympic official and I said, you know, Muhammad wants to see the loser. Can we go to the losing locker room? And we get to the losing locker room, and there's not tens of thousands of people. There's not any photographers. There's just a kid in the corner on a stool. He's got a towel around his neck. He's got a bloody mouse under his eye. This has got to be the lowest point of his athletic career at the very least. Felt like he let down his country. He's defeated. And the vibe in that room was literally the lowest of low. But then when Muhammad walks in, this kid recognizes him instantly. And in broken English, he says, Muhammad Ali. And Muhammad started dancing. He says, show me what you got, man. Show me what. And Muhammad starts throwing out jabs, and this kid starts ducking and smiling. Muhammad grabs him in a bear hug. And he said, I saw what you did out there, man. You look good, man. You're moving good. You can be a champion, man. He goes, don't give up. And I remember it warmed my heart how he took this kid from here to here in an instant. And I remember I got in the car and I said to Muhammad, I try to be a nice guy, but I've got to tell you, I was caught up in the moment. I didn't give that losing fighter a second thought. I said, Muhammad, you're the greatest. Muhammad said, tell me something I don't already know. But what I don't want people to forget, no doubt, to me, he is the finest example of a human that I've ever seen. The finest example of a great human being that I've ever seen, of the kindness that a human possesses. That was Muhammad Ali. But don't forget about this, man. Muhammad was the coolest cat in the room. I mean, he was good looking, he had charm, he had charisma, he had swagger before he knew what swagger was. I mean, I remember, went to, when it was about 25 years ago, he came in town to visit his mother, and he wanted to go to Outback Steakhouse. I had a friend there who was a big Muhammad fan. So we come in, and at the time here in Louisville, there was a fireman's convention. And all of these guys had their engine numbers on their shirt, and sure enough, I'd seen this scene a million times, man. These guys line up for an autograph, and I say to Muhammad, Muhammad, if you'd like, I'll play the bad guy. You know, I'll tell him to let you eat, and you can sign autographs later. Muhammad would have none of it. He's like, no, I'll sign between bites. So he's taking bites of his food, and he's signing. This one guy walks up, and you can tell he's a big fan. I mean, he knew Muhammad. He was scared to death. He all this adrenaline flowing. He said, Champ, he said, I saw the stance you made in the civil rights movement. I saw your stance against the Vietnam War. He said, I've got to tell you, Champ, you're my hero. He said, I've got a picture of you at the firehouse. You're my hero. Muhammad instantly, he wanted to change the channel. So he said to the guy, he said, you know, you're the real hero, jumping in fires, saving lives, saving babies, putting your life on the line. He said, man, you're the real hero. And the fireman responds real quickly. I mean, he knew all the nicknames. He said, man, but you fought the bear, Sonny Liston. He says, you fought the rabbit, Floyd Patterson. You fought Big George Foreman. You fought Smoking Joe Frazier. Muhammad interrupted him real quick, and he goes, yeah, but Joe wasn't really smoking. And I said, Muhammad, that's a good line. He goes, you're right, write that down. But it wasn't all about signing autographs and kissing babies. You know, if there was a village that needed food in a third world country, Muhammad was on plane, will travel with check. If there was a conflict and he could be part of a resolution, again, Muhammad will travel. As Lonnie had mentioned, if there were hostages to be released, Muhammad was a man of action. One of my favorite quotes, and I think it's right here in your program, Muhammad said, service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. And I just want to say, Champ, your rent is paid in full. Your rent is paid in full. Your rent is paid in full. You know, in fact, I think he's paid it forward because he has taught us to love rather than to hate, to look for commonalities rather than differences. And so therefore, I think he's really paid it forward for all of us. So, as we all know now, you know, the fight is over, but I'm here to tell you, the decision is in, and it is unanimous. Because of Muhammad Ali, we all win. The world wins. Thank you so much, Muhammad. It is time for a man of peace to rest in peace, and thank you so very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Billy Chrystal.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're at the halfway point. I was clean-shaven when this started. Dear Lonnie, family, friends, Mr. President, members of the clergy, all of these amazing people here in Louisville. Today, this outpouring of love and respect proves that 35 years after he stopped fighting, he is still the champion of the world. Last week, when we heard the news, time stopped. There was no war, there were no terrorists, no global catastrophes. The world stopped, took a deep breath, and sighed. Since then, my mind has been racing through my relationship with this amazing man, which is now 42 years that I know him. Every moment I can think of is cherished, and while others can tell you of his accomplishments, he wanted me to speak and tell you of some personal moments that we had together. I met him in 1974. I was just getting started as a stand-up comedian and struggling, but I had one good routine. It was a 3-minute conversation between Howard Cosell and Muhammad Ali where I would imitate both of them. Ali had just defeated George Foreman and regained the heavyweight title. Sport magazine made him the man of the year. And Dick Schaap, a wonderful writer and a great man, was the editor for Sport. And he was going to host this televised dinner honoring Muhammad Ali. So Dick called my agent looking for a comedian who did some sports material. As fate would have it, that comedian was not available. And she wisely said, "It's destiny, man." And she wisely said, but listen, I got this young kid, and he does this great imitation of Ali and Cosell. He'd be perfect for you. So I don't know why, but Dick said, okay, I'll try him. If he stinks, I can cut him out of the show. I couldn't believe it. My first time on television, and it would be with Ali. I arrived at the Plaza Hotel. The event was jammed. I met Mr. Shapp, who would later become a part of my family. And he said, well, how should I introduce you? Nobody knows who you are. And I said, just say I'm one of Ali's closest and dearest friends. And my thought was, I'll get right to the microphone, go into my Howard Cosell, and I'll be fine. And then I nervously moved into the jammed ballroom, and that's when I saw him for the first time in person. It's very hard to describe how much he meant to me. You had to live in his time. It's great to look at clips, and it's amazing that we have them, but to live in his time, watching his fights, experiencing the genius of his talent was absolutely extraordinary. Every one of his fights was an aura of a Super Bowl. He did things nobody would do. He predicted the round that he would knock somebody out in, and then he would do it. He was funny. He was beautiful. He was the most perfect athlete you ever saw, and those were his own words. But he was so much more than a fighter as time went on. With Bobby Kennedy gone, Martin Luther King gone, Malcolm X gone. Who was there to relate to when Vietnam exploded in our face? There were millions of young men my age, eligible for the draft for a war that we didn't believe in, all of us huddled on the conveyor belt that was rapidly feeding the war machine. But it was Ali who stood up for us by standing up for himself. And after he was stripped of the title, and the right to fight anywhere in the world, he gave speeches at colleges and on television that totally reached me. He seemed as comfortable talking to kings and queens as the lost and unrequited. He never lost his sense of humor, even as he lost everything else. He was always himself, willing to give up everything for what he believed in. And his passionate rhetoric about the life and plight of black people in our country resonated strongly in my house. I grew up in a house that was dedicated to civil rights. My father was a producer of jazz concerts in New York City and was one of the first to integrate bands in the 40s and 50s. Jazz musicians referred to my dad as the Branch Rickey of jazz. My uncle and my family, Jewish people, produced Strange Fruit, Billie Holiday's classic song describing the lynching of African Americans in this country. And so I felt him. And now there he was, just a few feet from me. I couldn't stop looking at him, and he seemed to like glow, and he was like in slow motion, his amazing face smiling and laughing. I was seated a few seats from him on the dais, and in the room were all of these athletes in their individual sports, great ones. Gino Marchetti of the Baltimore Colts, Franco Harris of the Steelers, Archie Griffin, who had won the Heisman from Ohio State, literary legends, Neil Simon, George Plimpton, all on the dais, fawning over Ali, who then looked at me with an expression that seemed to say, what is Joel Gray doing here? Mr. Shapp introduced me as one of Ali's closest and dearest friends. 2 people clapped. My wife and the agent. I rose, Ali still staring at me. I passed right behind him, got to the podium, went right into the Cosell. Hello, everyone. Howard Cosell coming to you live from Zaire. Some would pronounce it Zaire. They're wrong. It got big laughs. And then I went into the Ali. Everybody's talking about George Foreman. I want to talk about George Foreman. George Foreman was ugly. He's so slow. George was slow. I come out, voop, voop, voop. And then I rope-a-dope George, and I'm still fast at 33 years of age. I'm so fast I can turn up the lights, be in my bed before the room gets dark. Howard, I'm announcing tonight that I got new religious beliefs. From now on, I want to be known as Izzy Yiskowitz. I am now an Orthodox Jew. Izzy Yiskowitz, I am the greatest of all time. The audience exploded. See, no one had ever done him before. And here he was, a white kid from Long Island, imitating the greatest of all time, and he was loving it. And when I was done, he gave me this big bear hug, and he whispered in my ear, "You're my little brother." Which is what he always called me until the last time that I saw him. We were always there for each other. If he needed me for something, I was there. He came to anything I asked him to do. Most memorable, he was an honorary chairman for a dinner and a very important event where I was being honored by the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. He did all of this promotion for it. He came to the dinner. He sat with my family for the entire evening. He took photographs with everybody. The most famous Muslim man in the world honoring his Jewish friend. And because he was there, we raised a great deal of money. And I was able to use it to endow the university in Jerusalem with something that I told him about. And it was something that he loved the theory of. And it thrives to this day. It's called Peace Through the Performing Arts. It's a theater group where Israeli, Arab, and Palestinian actors, writers, and directors all work together in peace, creating original works of art. And that doesn't happen without him. I had so many funny, unusual moments with him. I sat next to him at Howard Cosell's funeral. A very somber day, to be sure. Closed casket was on the stage. Muhammad and I were sitting somewhere over there next to each other. And he quietly whispered to me, "Little brother, do you think he's wearing his hairpiece?" So I said, "I don't think so." "Well, then how will God recognize him?" So I said, "Champ, once he opens his mouth, God will know." So we started laughing. It was a muffled laugh at first, but then we couldn't contain ourselves. Here we were at a funeral, me with Muhammad Ali, laughing like two little kids who heard something dirty in church. You know, we're just laughing and laughing. And then he looked at me and he whispered, "Howard was a good man." One time he asked me if I would like to run with him one morning, do road work with him. I said, "Well, that'd be amazing. Where do you run?" He said, "Well, I run at this country club, and I run on a golf course early in the morning. It's very private. Nobody bothers me. We'll have a great time." And I said, "Champ, I can't run there. The club has a reputation for being restricted." "Well, it's restricted me. They don't allow Jews there. They don't have any Jewish members." He was incensed. "I'm a black Muslim, and they let me run there. Little brother, I'm never going to run there again." And he didn't. My favorite memory perhaps was 1979. He had just retired, and there was a retirement party at the Forum, Los Angeles, for Muhammad and 20,000 of his closest friends in Los Angeles. I performed a piece that I had created. The imitation had grown into a life story. It's called 15 Rounds. And I play him from the age of 18 until he's 36, ready for the rematch with Leon Spinks. I posted it on the internet last week, footage that nobody had ever seen before of me portraying Ali, doing his life for him all those years ago in 1979. There were 20,000 people there, but I was doing it only for him. It's one of my favorite performances that I've ever done in my life. I sort of got lost in him. I didn't even know where I was at the end of the performance. And suddenly I'm backstage with another heavyweight champion, Richard Pryor. And Pryor is holding on to me, crying. And then I see Ali coming. And he's got a full head of steam, and he's looking only at me. And he nudged Mr. Pryor aside, and he whispered in my ear with a big bear hug, "Little brother, you made my life better than it was." But didn't he make all of our lives? Is my history with a man. And I've labored to come up with a way to describe the legend. He was a tremendous bolt of lightning, created by Mother Nature out of thin air, a fantastic combination of power and beauty. We've seen still photographs of lightning bolts at the moment of impact, ferocious in its strength, magnificent in its elegance. And at the moment of impact, it lights up everything around it, so you can see everything clearly. Muhammad Ali struck us in the middle of America's darkest night, in the heart of its most threatening gathering storm. His power toppled the mightiest of foes, and his intense light shined on America. And we were able to see clearly injustice, inequality, poverty, pride, self-realization, courage, laughter, love, joy, and religious freedom for all. Ali forced us to take a look at ourselves. This brash young man who thrilled us, angered us, confused, and challenged us ultimately became a silent messenger of peace, who taught us that life is best when you build bridges between people, not walls. My friends, only once in 1,000 years or so do we get to hear a Mozart or see a Picasso, read a Shakespeare. Ali was one of them, and yet, at his heart, he was still a kid from Louisville who ran with the gods and walked with the crippled and smiled at the foolishness of it all. He is gone, but he will never die. He was my big brother. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bryant Gumbel.
The great Maya Angelou, who was herself no stranger to fame, wrote that ultimately people will forget what you said and people will forget what you did, but that no one will ever forget how you made them feel. As applied to Muhammad Ali, the march of time may one day diminish his boasts and his poetry, maybe even his butterflies and bees. It may even one day dull the memories of the thriller in Manila and the rumble in the jungle. But I doubt any of us will ever forget how Muhammad Ali made us feel. And I'm not talking about how proud he made you feel with his exploits, or how special he made you feel when you were privileged enough to be in his company. I'm talking about how he gripped our hearts and our souls and our conscience and made our fights his fights for decades. People like me, who were once young, semi-gifted, and black, will never forget what he freed within us. Some of us, like him, took pride in being black, bold, and brash. And because we were so unapologetic, we were, in the eyes of many, way too uppity. We were way too arrogant. Yet we reveled in being like him. By stretching society's boundaries as he did, he gave us levels of strength and courage we didn't even know we had. But Ali's impact was not limited to those of a certain race or of a certain religion or of a certain mindset. The greatness of this man for the ages was that he was, in fact, a man for all ages. Has any man ever scripted a greater arc to his life? What does it say of a man, any man, that he can go from being viewed as one of his country's most polarizing figures to arguably its most beloved? And to do so without changing his nature or for a second compromising his principles. Yeah, you know, there were great causes, there were great national movements, there were huge divisions that afforded Ali unusual opportunities to symbolize our struggles. But Harry Truman had it right when he said men make history and not the other way around. Or as Lauryn Hill so nicely put it, consequence is no coincidence. Befitting his stature as the GOAT, Muhammad Ali never shied away from a fight. He fought not just the biggest and baddest men of his day inside the ropes, but outside the ring he also went toe-to-toe with an array of critics, a seemingly endless succession of societal norms, the architects of a vile, immoral war, the U.S. government. He even fought, ultimately to his detriment, the limitations of Father Time. Strictly speaking, fighting is what he did. But he broadened that definition by sharing his struggles with us and by viewing our struggles as his. And so it was that at various times he accepted and led battles on behalf of his race, in support of his generation, in defense of his religious beliefs, and ultimately, in spite of his disease. I happen to have been overseas working in Norway this past week. My buddy Matt called, told me the champ had been taken to the hospital. At this time, it was really serious. Right away, I called Lonnie, who was, as always, a pillar of strength. And as we discussed the medical details, the doctor's views, and the ugly realities of mortality, Lonnie said, "Bryant, the world still needs him." And indeed it does. The world needs a champion who always worked to bridge the economic and social divides that threaten a nation that he dearly loved. The world needs a champion that always symbolized the best of Islam to offset the hatred born of fear. And the world needs a champion who believed in fairness and inclusion for all. Hating people because of their color is wrong, Ali said. And it doesn't matter which color does the hating. It's just plain wrong. Yeah, we do need Muhammad Ali now. We need the strength and the hope, the compassion and the conviction that he always demonstrated. But this time, our beloved champion is down. And for once, he'll not get up. Not this time. Not ever again. Let me close with a quick personal story. 50 years ago, Muhammad Ali defeated George Chuvalo in Toronto, Canada. The very next day, he showed up in my Hyde Park neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. As Ali got out of a car in the driveway at the home of Elijah Muhammad, I happened to be next door, shooting hoops in a friend's backyard. I, of course, quickly ran to the fence, and for the first time in my life, I shook the champ's hand. I was 17. I was awestruck. And man, I thought he was the greatest. Now, half a century and a lifetime of experiences later, I am still awestruck. And I'm convinced more than ever that Muhammad Ali's the greatest. To be standing here by virtue of his and Lonnie's request, it's mind-numbing. The honor that Ali has done me today as he goes to his grave is one that I will take to mind. God bless you, champ.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 42nd President of the United States, the Honorable William Jefferson Clinton.
Thank you. I can just hear Muhammad saying now, well, I thought I should be eulogized by at least one president. And by making you last in a long, 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 long line, I guaranteed you a standing ovation. I'm trying to think of what has been left unsaid. First, Lonnie, I thank you and the members of the family for telling me that he actually, as Bryant said, picked us all to speak and given me a chance to come here. I thank you for what you did to make the second half of his life greater than the first. I thank you for the Muhammad Ali Center and what it has come to represent to so many people. Here's what I'd like to say. I spend a lot of time now, as I get older and older and older, trying to figure out what makes people tick, how do they turn out the way they are, how do some people refuse to become victims and rise from every defeat. We've all seen the beautiful pictures of the home Muhammad Ali was a boy in, and people visiting and driving by. I think he decided something I hope every young person here will decide. I think he decided very young to write his own life story. I think he decided before he could possibly have worked it all out, and before fate and time could work their will on him, he decided that he would not be ever disempowered. He decided that not his race, nor his place, nor the expectations of others, positive, negative, or otherwise, would strip from him the power to write his own story. He decided first to use these stunning gifts: his strength and speed in the ring, his wit and way with words in managing the public, and his mind and heart to figure out at a fairly young age
who he was, what he believed, and how to live with the consequences of acting on what he believed. A lot of people make it to steps 1 and 2 and still just can't quite manage living with the consequences of what he believed. For the longest time, in spite of all the wonderful things that have been said here, I remember thinking when I was a kid, this guy is so smart. And he never got credit for being as smart as he was. And then, I don't think he ever got the credit for being, until later, as wise as he was. In the end, besides being a lot of fun to be around and basically a universal soldier for our common humanity, I will always think of Muhammad as a truly free man of faith. And being a man of faith, he realized he would never be in full control of his life. Something like Parkinson's could come along. But being free, he realized that life still was open to choices. It is the choices that Muhammad Ali made that have brought us all here today in honor and love. And the only other thing I'd like to say, I think we all need to really, really think about, is that the first part of his life was dominated by the triumph of his truly unique gifts. We should never forget them. We should never stop looking at the movies. We should thank Will Smith for making his movie. We should all be thrilled. It was a thing of beauty. But the second part of his life was more important because he refused to be imprisoned by a disease that kept him hamstrung longer than Nelson Mandela was kept in prison in South Africa. That is, in the second half of his life, he perfected gifts that we all have. Every single solitary one of us have gifts of mind and heart. It's just that he found a way to release them in ways large and small. I'll never forget, I asked Lonnie if she remembered the time when they were still living in Michigan, and I gave a speech in Southwest Michigan. There's an economic club there, and it's sort of a ritual when a president leaves office. And you had to get reacclimated. Nobody plays a song when you walk in a room anymore. You don't really know what you're supposed to do. And this club here, there, it's called the Economic Club, I think. They're used to acting like you still deserve to be listened to, and you got to get reacclimated. So they came to dinner, and they sat with me at this dinner. And he knew, somehow he knew, that I was a little off my feed that night. I was trying to imagine how to make this new life. And so he told me a really bad joke. And he told it so well, and he laughed so hard that I totally got over it and had a great time. He had that feel about, there's no textbook for that, knowing where somebody else is in their head. Picking up the body language. Then Lonnie and Muhammad got me to come here when we had the dedication to the Muhammad Ali Center, and I was trying to be incredibly old, gray-haired, elder statesman, dignified. I got to elevate this guy. So I'm saying all this stuff in very high-tone language, and Muhammad sneaks up behind me and puts his fingers up. Finally, after all the years that we had been friends, my enduring image of him is like a little reel in 3 shots. The boxer I thrilled to as a boy, the man I watched take the last steps to light the Olympic flame when I was president. And I'll never forget it. I was sitting there in Atlanta. By then we knew each other. By then I felt it. I had some sense of what he was living with. And I was still weeping like a baby, seeing his hand shake and his leg shake, and knowing, by God, he was going to make those last few steps. No matter what it took, the flame would be lit, the fight would be won, the spirit would be affirmed. I knew it would happen. And then this, the children whose lives he touched, the young people he inspired. It's the most important thing of all. So I ask you to remember that. We all have an Ali story. It's the gifts we all have that should be most honored today, because he released them to the world, never wasting a day that the rest of us could see anyway, feeling sorry for himself that he had Parkinson's, knowing that more than 3 decades of his life would be circumscribed in ways that would be chilling to the naked eye. But with the free spirit, it made his life bigger, not smaller, because other people, all of us, unlettered, unschooled, in the unleashing said, well, would you look at that? Look at that. May not be able to run across a ring anymore, may not be able to dodge everybody and exhaust everybody anymore, and he's bigger than ever, because he is a free man of faith, sharing the gifts we all have. We should honor him by letting our gifts go among the world as he did. God bless you, my friend. Go in peace.
There'll be time for that. But right now is the time for silence. So will everyone rise and observe a period of silence, reflect on what the chant meant to you as the Ali family exits.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
All right, be seated. Be seated, be seated. The program is not over. We're trying to create space for the family to be able to exit in peace. Please be seated. We want to make prayer. We want to share something before we close the program, so please be seated. As we move towards the end of the program, which will occur in a couple of minutes, I would be remiss if I didn't say the following. Indeed, as we all know, and anyone who lives within a ghetto or barrio here in the United States, that indeed there are violent, racist, reckless policemen. That's a fact. But there also are policemen and women who are dedicated professionals, who are compassionate, who have great concern for their communities. And I can say with all honesty and openness, during my past week here in Louisville, Kentucky, or past 5 days, myself, my wife, Dr. Giannotti, everyone that I've spoken to has commented on the professionalism, the dignity of the policemen here and women in Louisville, Kentucky that we've interacted with. And I'm sure there are bad apples here too. But as they say, one bad apple doesn't spoil the whole bunch. Now, they asked me to make a prayer to close this service, but Reverend Cosby threw down the gauntlet with that West End poem. So I'm going to have to respond. This poem was written in Muhammad Ali's house. And Muhammad Ali was the first one to hear this poem. And I'm glad Mike Tyson left. It's two parts. Part one is Ali the fighter. He floated like a butterfly and stung like a bee, the greatest fighter this world has yet to see. His opponents agree on one thing, they all got it right. In the ring with Ali, your life was in danger that night. Had he lived during the time of Jack Johnson, Joe Louis, Marciano, or Max Schmeling, his superiority over all of the former would be telling. Had he fought Tyson or Holyfield at the height of his career, on the list of heavyweight champions, their names would not appear. If reindeer could box, he would have whooped Donner and Blitzen. If presidents could fight, he would have whooped Richard Nixon. For his right was filled with power, and his left was relentless. He beat people so bad, he'd have to engage in acts of repentance. So when you discuss who was the greatest heavyweight of all time, to mention any name other than Ali's is a crime. Then part two is Ali the man. With the grace of a butterfly and the tenacity of a bee, he struck many a blow against injustice and indignity and inequality. Coming of age during a time of legal segregation, he came to embody the highest values of the nation. Standing up for the truth, defying the warmongering throng, he declared, I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong. He would not take up the gun. He refused to pull the trigger. He quipped, ain't no Viet Cong ever called me nigger. Knowing when to attack and when to retreat, he brought an entire nation to his feet, not to cheer for his exploits going down in the ring, but to fall right in line with Malcolm and King. Willing to give up his title, the money, the lights, he dedicated himself to a higher fight. The fight for truth and justice to liberate lands occupied by the highest court in the land, his case would not be denied. With a heart made of gold and a spirit to match, he was able to rebuild his life almost starting from scratch. With the torch of love, and the flame of good. He lit the fire of hope in the hearts of many boys and girls in the hood. Not knowing the word I can't, he was never deterred. And because of his example, many a dream was not deferred. On the heart of every life he touched, he left an indelible stamp, and he will always be known as the people's champ. Now, we have to make the prayer. Muhammad Ali's spirit, his body is down, but his spirit is up. And it will stay up as long as we keep it up. And we keep it up as long as we live with the grace and dignity he lived with. As long as we love with the passion he loved with. As long as we share and care and give with the boundless generosity he exemplified. So God, as we leave this hall, as we depart from this August gathering, may we be blessed to love as he loved, to live as he lived, to share as he shared, to care as he cared, to the extent of our various capacities, and to float as freely as he floated. God bless, and blessings and peace upon Muhammad. Good evening.